Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Inktavo, the parent company of InkSoft, Printavo, Graphics Flow, and now SignTracker. Welcome to our webinar today on the state of the industry in direct-to-film. I have a very special guest with me, Adrienne Palmer, who is the Editor-in-Chief of DTF Printing. And I think the first place to start is, well, let's say hi. That's a great place to start. But Adrienne, tell me about DTF Printing and what you do and what your day looks like and what you guys are doing to promote this incredible new technology.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Craig. As you mentioned, I am the editor-in-chief of DTF Printing, a digital media company dedicated to helping apparel decorators in the direct-to-film printing space grow their businesses and brands. So essentially, we're an education resource. We have a website, newsletter, social media accounts. We cover industry news, how-tos, education, shop profiles, DTF basics, new products, demos. We have a directory, a classified section. We also have the DTF Printing podcast. And just as this week, we have 25 episodes that are available now. And my guests range from screen printers who outsource transfers and then heat press in-house to business owners who are running 16 DTF printers in their facilities. So yeah, really our audience is anyone interested in learning more about DTF printing and how it fits into their business model.
You know, it's interesting. I kind of consider you to be the clearinghouse of all educational content about direct-to-film, and I've used your website and your editorial and your podcast quite extensively to train our sales team on direct-to-film technology. So thank you for doing that. And I do listen to your podcast, and I don't listen to a lot of industry podcasts, so I guess indirectly that's a compliment. So you guys do a great job with that and always have interesting speakers. So out of curiosity, how did you first hear about direct-to-film technology? How did that land on your lap? Because I know how it happened for me, but I'd be curious to hear how it happened for you.
Yeah, well, first, thank you. I'm glad that you're using it as a resource internally and that you listen to the podcast. I always love to hear that. But yeah, so I previously was the editor-in-chief of Screen Printing and Big Picture magazines. So at the last few trade shows, I had heard about DTF printing, of course. But like, I have to be honest, when I was approached to start this new media company, I definitely called a few trusted resources to be like, is this the real deal? Because, DTG and people had conversations about, it being a fad, and every printer I spoke with said they either already had it in-house or were planning to bring it in-house or, outsource transfers, heat press in-house. So I was really relieved and excited, because leaving two established brands to start something in a new sector of the industry was, big change for me. And so I'm happy to say, DTF is not a fad and it's here for the long run. And even at Printing United Expo last year, we launched DTF Printing the night before Printing United Expo. And so I thought just because maybe I had just launched the website and that's all I was talking about, I no longer was focused on wide format and screen printing. I thought, well, everyone was just talking to me about DTF printing because we just launched this. But I talked to other people and they're like, no, that's what everyone is talking about at this show. So it kind of came on. I mean, DTF is so new. It kind of just came on in this big wave. And I'm happy to ride it.
I got blindsided on it completely. I did not see it coming. I usually pride myself on really staying up to speed on new printing technology. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I had a client call me on the phone. And he said, "Hey, what do you know about this direct-to-film printing?" I'm like, "What is that?" And he said, "Hey, I just bought one of these printers." This was in the summer of 2020 when everything was going down in the pandemic. And my good client, Mark Heiss, decided to buy a printer. And he said, "Yeah, I don't know. I think it's about the size of a Camaro when you put the shaker unit on it, and I'm going to see how this thing works and I'll let you know." And he started sending me some samples, and I was immediately skeptical because it just sounded too good to be true. Digital printing, full color, 100% cotton, polyester blends, 100% poly, good wash durability, affordable. And it checked all those boxes. So I knew pretty early on it was going to be a big deal, which leads me to this next question. It's a rapidly evolving technology, but how do you see DTF really impacting some of our traditional processes, like screen printing? Certainly also impacts direct-to-garment printing in a very big way. How do you see it disrupting those industries? And do you see adoption by people that are, big-time screen printers all of a sudden are open-minded about DTF technology? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do want to say, I don't think screen printing is going away at all. But I think that DTF has lit a fire under traditional screen printers. So they're considering other avenues to print shirts. You don't have to say no to customers. So I would say maybe it's more so changed their mindset. And I think some traditional screen printers may not see, the artistry behind DTF, or at least that's what I was hearing, last year. I don't think that, I think that could be further from the truth. So, with DTF printing, it's, allowing, as you mentioned, those high quality prints, high color counts. You don't have to screen print sleeves or maybe, another annoying placement. So it's more so being, versatile and saying yes to your customer, having fun with it. You can even screen print and DTF, the same garment. So I do think that there's an opportunity to have something as an addition instead of having to say no to your customer. That's what I think is really exciting about this. And I think a lot of screen printers now are realizing oh, okay, this is something that I should adopt and should be involved in some way.
Yeah, it was interesting. We did a shop tour and we were in Denver for our, we had a meetup with we're all remote. And so we got the band back together in Denver and we did a shop tour. It was called the Small Print Shop, and they're 100% water-based shop. And I was shocked to see the heat presses and all the DTF workflow going through there. They have 2 automatics and manual. It's the state of the art. They have every feasible, laser direct to screen, the reclamation system. They got everything going on, and there's these heat presses. And I was like, I asked Steven, the owner, I was like, hey, what's your thoughts on DTF? And he says, hey, it's great. It's a perfect complement to what we do. Because if we have to do this small run, full color stuff, and you show me some samples of what they're doing, it's the perfect niche. And frankly, we don't like screen printing on polyester. And so for all of our polyester stuff, and he said, even in caps, he says, we do a ton of cap patches with it. So it was really refreshing for me to see somebody that's kind of an old school screen printer embrace the technology. And, I think screen printers have to be kind of open-minded about it because it's competition for them. If I'm a DTF printer and let's say all I have is a heat press and I'm buying transfers, how do you compete against a screen printer? What's kind of the little, what's the angle there?
Yeah. So, I think that it's all about, working with your customer, figuring out what works for your shop. And there's so many benefits to all printing processes, but I think it really depends on that job. And so just some of the benefits, faster turnaround time, versatile applications, versatile substrates. You don't have to even just stay in the apparel industry. There's different industries you can be part of, multiple diverse garment placements, that no minimum order quantity, which I think is huge. The high quality prints, the high color counts, a more streamlined production process, low barrier to entry, so more people are able to get involved. And so I feel like with DTF printing, you're allowing your business to scale quickly. And with screen printing, provides a wider variety of inks. You mentioned water-based and the different fabric types. But achieving those full color designs can be challenging, and screen printing requires minimum order quantities, the detailed production process. And even with DTG, that may be ideal for cotton fabrics, but there are going to be limitations when it comes to other fabric types, or do you have a fabric that's not pre-treated, etc. So I really think, that competition, it's educating yourself on the differences between all the different printing processes, the testing, because that is so huge with DTF printing, and then being able to have, once you are considered the expert, being able to have those conversations with your customers I think is kind of the best way to kind of figure that out. And then whether that is if you are a screen printer and you're bringing that on, or whether you're new to the game and you're just a DTF printer, how you're going to compete with those traditional screen printers. I think it's having those benefits and being able to educate your customer based off of all that knowledge that you just received.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine that does a lot of high-end 8-color simulated process screen printing, and he was very skeptical about the process. And he said, well, this kind of printing, for, 8-color simulated process printing, they're never going to be able to replace that. And we're standing next to, it was at the Printing United show, and we're standing next to the Ryonet and Supacolor booth where they're just pumping out all these, they're just pressing shirts. I mean, there was a line around the aisle. I mean, it was crazy. And some of these shirts had a lot of very detailed, things that you would normally probably look at doing an 8-color simulated process. And it dawned on me at that moment, he said, the reason people buy that type of print is that was really the only way to do it, was 8-color simulated process. Until DTF got good, the only way you're really going to get that kind of look. And I said, we printed up some shirts and we did them 8-color simulated process for the trade show. And we did the same thing in transfers from Supacolor and gave them out. People complimented us over and over how much they preferred the DTF transfer because of the detail and the color that it captured. But I'm kind of with him a little bit. I mean, there's definitely a certain look and appeal to that half-toned 8-color simulated process. It just has a vibe to it, and it's very vintage. So I agree it's not going to be displaced by DTF, but the DTF has definitely bitten into that. And I'm talking to printers now that said, we used to not take that kind of business on at all. It's just a pain. We are not good at it, and it's a lot of spoilage. It says, now we just do that with the transfers. Do you kind of see that happening too, or?
Yeah, people are able to say yes more so than they were. And yeah, I mean, especially if you are just ordering transfers and you have a great vendor that you can work with and you're heat pressing in-house, that's not taking a ton of time or training or, a ton of crazy effort. So I think that is, now that people are understanding like, oh, I can do that as an option, it's kind of like, why not? And then you mentioned a little bit the difference between, DTF and screen printing. I was at Logo Daddy's open house in St. Louis in May, and I was on the Shirt Show podcast. It was a live podcast during the event, and they had printed a shirt, via screen printing and via DTF. And there's a whole audience there of, runs the gamut of manufacturers to printers and people who had been in the industry, over 30 years. And they couldn't tell the difference between the two. So I think we're going to see a lot of that as well. It's like, okay, how are we really knowing the difference here? Are our customers knowing the difference? So I don't know. I feel like that's going to be an interesting test that a lot of people will be doing in the future.
Yeah, and I think, if you look at like the whole print-on-demand market, it used to be if you're going to do a print-on-demand business model, especially if you're running stores, and we know a little bit about that with InkSoft, it just the only way it really made sense was to do direct-to-garment printing. And, people, invest close to 7 figures in, these incredible pieces of equipment like the Cornettes. But now, you buy a heat press and you order transfers in, and, you have a stack of transfers on the shelf. You sell down to a reorder quantity, reorder transfer. It seems like you can just scale on-demand stores. We've got Davis Slagle, who's on here listening right now, who is principal in B Graphics. They host, I think, about 700 InkSoft stores. We had them, did a case study on them, and I believe they're doing the majority of their production now with direct-to-film transfers, and that's coming from someone that was a pretty accomplished, massive screen printing operation. So we're definitely seeing a trend towards direct-to-film on these, certainly as a solution for print-on-demand, which is, to me, is really exciting. So with that being said, what's happening with equipment and presses and inks and shakers and films and powders? What is there anything big on the horizon, or do you think it's just starting to stabilize, or is there something that we need to be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, and I will just say that Davis was one of the resources that I called before I moved over to DTF Printing, because we were at a Shirt Lab event in Chicago, and he was kind of like mentioning that, like he's going to get rid of all of his screen printing equipment and he's going to this new technology. And I called him, I was like, is DTF the new technology? And he's like, yeah, I've sold everything and I've moved over. I'm like, okay, like this is the real deal. Yeah. So, okay. In terms of new equipment, I think we'll see a lot of new products at Printing United Expo in Las Vegas here in a few weeks. Things that have kind of come over my desk. People still say that. So TexPro has a new commercial printer and is releasing new film. Coldesi just launched a new dryer shaker. DTF Superstore is now manufacturing dryer shakers in-house. Rock is releasing the Rock Feed, which is an automatic DTF sheet feeder that will feed a transfer onto their Rock Impress. I just spoke with Ross yesterday, and they actually have some DTF products in the pipeline, not just Printing United, but I think that will come through maybe impressions. So he mentioned a new robot that will peel off the plastic back of transfers automatically. An automatic t-shirt unloader. So I guess the keyword there is automatic. We're seeing a lot of wide format printers who are very familiar with the digital technology offering DTF printers like Mamaki and Roland. So I think advances in their printers will be coming out soon. I think we're going to see a lot of traditional screen printer OEMs making the move like Rock. But on the note about wide format, and something for listeners here to consider is connecting with wide format printers like print shops and OEMs to better understand the digital technology, because that is their bread and butter. Can also consider purchasing a laser cutter for your transfers. Wide format is known for roll-to-roll automated laser cutters, for vinyl. And you can use the same tech for DTF transfers. DTF printing technology is just so new. So you really just have to be paying attention, and you're most likely going to be, upgrading your equipment over the next few years, just as these manufacturers kind of tinker and play with the tech. And so just keeping an eye out, going to trade shows, and just having that in the back of your head that you may have to upgrade, and just kind of pay attention to that.
It's interesting. I did a class with Romalia from Supacolor for impressions, and he's just such an engaging individual and such an incredibly knowledgeable person about this technology. And I asked him the question, hey, what's the best advice you can give somebody when they get into DTF? And he says, buy a good heat press. And it kind of took me by surprise. And he kind of broke down the ROI of having even a 2-station shuttle press pneumatic with compressor unit, and the amount of additional productivity that you have versus doing this manually. And, you look at this technology like what Rock's doing with these automated carousel-based, heat presses, which is basically similar to an automatic screen printing press. And now you got a robot to load it, a robot to peel it, and a robot to stack it. Wow. I mean, now you're starting to get probably to the economies of scales where you can probably compete with an automatic screen printing press. I don't think you're going to get down there in terms of ink costs, but in terms of production, I think you're going to get pretty close. The target markets for direct to film, it feels to me like, you can go back to the usual suspects. If I interview 100 customers and I ask them this question, let me guess, your business is, majority or minority, schools, team sports, you're probably doing some corporate, right? And then maybe you have some niche markets. That's kind of everybody. It's just the mix is a little different. But do you see any specific niche markets that direct to film printing technologies opened up where it's just especially good at?
Yeah. And sorry, I keep going back to the comments that we were just having the conversation, but Rum is right. Really invest in a good heat press. And if you can, dual heat press, move into the automated, route. Because I see so many people just buying cheap, going on Amazon, buying, it's like, oh, you can get into DTF for a couple $100. You can. Should you? Probably not. Like, invest in that, especially if you're just ordering transfers, because you're going to get your money back. I would definitely look into, more professional heat presses. They do run the gamut, and it is kind of that same list as apparel, decorators, and general. So, we've talked about the online stores, schools, sports teams, really anybody that's looking for short runs, high color counts. So custom apparel businesses, restaurants. I mean, I would say even influencers, like I see that so much. Some reality star has a one-liner from their show, and all of a sudden they have a merch store. And they're definitely using DTF because you can figure out, if the store ends in a month, well, I have to print 100 shirts or 1,000 shirts or whatever, which I am seeing more DTF printers. That number is going up a lot higher than I thought it would be. I spoke with someone who's like, yeah, we're doing like 1,000 run jobs with DTF. So it's not just the 10, 20, 30, 40. So seeing that more often, especially with that automation in the heat press. And then, I think that other apparel shops, due to job quantity, environment, size of shop, speed of delivery, cost, these apparel shops, screen printing specific, they're going to purchase DTF transfers, heat press on site, or outsource the entire process. So I think that is giving even a bigger opportunity to DTF printers who can just print transfers all day, and they're not even touching the heat press. They're just shipping that out to other screen printers who do have the heat press. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I was watching a TikTok on a woman that had a boutique, and what she was doing in the boutique, she had a hat press, and you just come into the hat press. She has a couple dozen different patch designs and direct-to-film transfers, and press it yourself. And she turned it into kind of almost like a craft thing. And you could do multi-location prints and personalize, and it was really interesting. I feel like that on-site printing aspect, direct-to-film is just perfect for that.
Seeing that is cool. If you've never seen a shirt screen printed and you're at an event, but the end goal of that is maybe less so the experience. It's the free shirt or it's the free hat. So if you can crank out more with the heat press and you just have the transfers and you're not dealing with the setup and the mess and all this stuff, like that's such a huge benefit to print shops that are doing live printing or boutiques that I just spoke with retail owner at Leisure Wear and Athletic Wear in Cincinnati, and she has a heat press and she just orders transfers from a local shop, and does stuff all the time, pop-up events, or people can come in and bring their own clothes and she'll heat press them. And it's become this whole other side of the business. She was super excited to talk to me because she had never really talked to anybody in the print industry, and we can kind of geek out on all of this. But yeah, absolutely. Like retail owners can do something totally unique that they've never done without a ton of setup and a ton of cost.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my former co-workers, Courtney Wampall, and her husband, Brian, have a business in Buffalo, Wyoming, Got It. And they do these on-site events, and they'll bring in the transfers. But she says it's just an amazing lead gen for them. They have a little card with QR code, drives people to their websites, and they host a lot of stores for people. And so they picked up their family and moved from Philadelphia, PA, to this whole town in Wyoming, and they've just taken over the business there. And she was a coworker, and her business got so big that she had to focus 100% on their family business. So we miss working with Courtney, but what a smart way to generate leads. You set up an event at a community event, and you're at the county fair or whatever you're doing, and you're just pressing. And by the way, here's a card. We can do this for you too. So in terms of, AI and automation, we talked a little bit about that, but that, obviously it's not the buzzword anymore. It's the reality. AI is part of our lives now, whether you like it or not. It's a part of my daily life, but it just allows you to do so much more. What are you seeing in terms of, AI technology and automation technology and how it's going to impact this DTF world we're in?
Yeah. I've spoken with a lot of different business owners who are really leaning into AI and automation specifically for online stores. And Davis is on this call, so I'm just going to call him out again, like we've done a few times, but he really is, a great example. So with his online stores, everything's automated, from the ordering process to the art that's available to the constant communication that happens between his sales team and the customer. So I think using that for an online store is huge, especially on the customer service side. I had a meeting today with Shelfmark. They're an AI startup that recently entered this space. They're still in beta, but they deploy AI computer vision to catch defects that come from DTF printers. So that's major quality control. And so like that's a whole other realm of AI. You know, that's out there. In terms of artwork, even if you're just brainstorming an idea for a design or giving your customers, you know, general mock-ups, you know, the sky's the limit. And like you said, like automation is the reality. And I am finding the more conversations that I'm having with print shop owners and business owners is that the print industry is more of like a tech industry, honestly. And so many people are figuring out proprietary software and just doing things internally that you don't even know is happening. So yeah, I mean, definitely find a way to use AI and automation in some format just to streamline your processes.
The next question I want to kind of throw at you is, you know, there's always this question, if you were around for the initial run of direct to garment, which I was there at the infancy of that, it was the Wild West. Technology came out, people just were blown away. Lots of printers got sold, lots of printers ended up gathering dust. There were some maintenance issues. Every other, you know, month there was a new printer from a manufacturer. And a lot of people had a bad, you know, taste in their mouth until it kind of settled in where, you know, there was a few very reliable companies like Epson and Brother and Kornit, big companies that engineered these purpose-built printers. We're starting to see that a little bit in direct-to-film too. You know, the Rolands and the Mamakis have entered this sphere. But as far as, you know, making a decision, there's so many printers on the market. When does it make sense to stop outsourcing your transfers and bring DTF printing in-house with your own equipment? Where do you see the cutoff for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to differ for every single person. So if you're considering bringing it in-house, you do need to look at kind of a laundry list of factors. So you need to look at your environment and workflow, and you need to look at the quality of equipment and products you purchase. You need to consider staff training. You need to find the right vendor who will support you during this entire process. You need to be prepared for continuous education. And then, of course, you know, that overall cost. Also, be prepared for maintenance and tech issues, especially if you're not familiar with, you know, digital equipment. And, you know, we even said this, like, invest in new technology every few years as it advances. And then once the printer's in this new environment, you really need to spend so much time testing the quality of prints. So those are all things that you need to consider. And if you're if you hear that list and you're like, that's just not going to work, you know, for my business model, at least right now, that's when you would consider outsourcing transfers and heat pressing in-house. But I wouldn't even say that it's like, oh, I'm spending X amount of dollars on transfers this month, or I have, you know, a staff of 100. There are plenty of larger printers who spend $1 million a year on transfers, and they're not bringing equipment in-house. And there are printers who don't touch the product and outsource everything. And you know, the pros of outsourcing, obviously you're not purchasing that printer, you know, so your overhead cost is lower. Training your current, or if you're hiring new employees, you know, that's simplified. But, you know, you're relying on a supplier for not only the speed of delivery, but the quality of those transfers. And if you aren't even getting those transfers to heat press, you know, you're never actually seeing the transfers, you have to trust who you're working with, because at that point, you don't have any control, or I guess I should say maybe like little to zero control over the process, the quality of prints, and turnaround time. So you really have to, there are factors to consider whatever route you're going to take to offer DTF printing in some way.
Yeah, I get asked by people all the time, what printer should I buy? And, you know, I pretty much tell them always the same thing. It's like, hey, listen, if you're going to buy a printer, and especially a printer that's capable of printing white ink, you need to be fully willing to get under the hood. You are going to be under the hood. You're going to be doing maintenance. You're going to be running cleaning cycles. You're going to go on vacation for 2 weeks and come back and be concerned that you're going to have clog heads. You need to, you know, factor in replacement print heads as a consumable and factor that into your pricing. And once you start having that conversation, with people, they start getting a little bit turned off on the idea of the printer. But then when you look at the pros of it, having the control and the rapid turnaround time and the ability to do, to me, the ability to do samples. That's one of the very best reasons to bring a printer in-house is you can do a small run or a sample just to try something. And if you want to get an idea in front of somebody, what better way to do it than to lay a T-shirt on them that has a full color print that you generated just specifically for them, right? There's just so many, different choices. How do you go about picking a vendor? Like what would you recommend to somebody if they want to bite the bullet, they're going to buy a printer, they're going to buy a shaker, they're going to do it. How do you recommend selecting a vendor?
So do your research because as you mentioned, there are a ton out there. I would say, one of the best ways to decide is to attend industry trade shows like DTF Expo. That would be a really great one to go to. But Printing United, Impressions, because this gives you the opportunity to chat with various vendors, meet reps in person, see and touch the final product. I mean, honestly, you should bring your own design and have them print it for you in real time. That's a great way to test that out. And really, you should be specific when discussing your current customer base, what you need the machine for, any of your future goals. And then, once you've talked to multiple vendors, you should connect with reputable shops, to get their reviews and testimonials. I would, don't be afraid to reach out to your peers because this industry is so awesome. Everyone will share the good, the bad, the ugly. Really listen to the bad and the ugly because people are being honest. Look at company Google reviews. And then back to that vendor thing real quick. Like if you're looking for a vendor, try to find someone with a history of quality product and service, has certified equipment, software, will come to your shop, will set up equipment for you, will train your staff. And then, what's so great now is that there's so many US-based manufacturers. Instead, before maybe a couple years ago, you're on the phone with someone at 2 a.m. because they're in Asia or you may be not hearing from them at all. So find someone with available staff to support those maintenance issues. And I mean, that can be in person or virtually, but I would look at maybe those things when you're trying to figure out what vendor to use. I think those are important.
I see kind of the whole gamut from folks that are willing to roll the dice and just blindly purchase a printer from Alibaba, pray it comes in, take it out of the box, assemble it, hope it prints. And I've seen folks succeed at that. I've seen a lot of people not succeed doing that. And then, the other end of the gamut is you deal with an established industry supplier and maybe even buy a printer that's produced by one of the, big Japanese names like, Mimaki or our Rollander brother now is converting some of their printing technology over to direct to film. So there's that whole gamut. I guess you just have to find what fits within your budget. But the advice I always like to give people is thinking long-term, not thinking short-term. Yeah, you might be saving a little bit of money up front, but over the life of the printer, are you really saving any more money if you're having to replace print heads all the time or pay for time and travel to have a technician come out to fix something? So I feel like, from my experience, the vendor is just as important as the printer. They're pretty evenly weighted. Here's a tricky question. Pricing, like how do you price out direct to film? Like you're in the trenches, so you kind of see how people are doing it. Are folks pricing out direct to film like screen printing, or are they doing it like more like cost per square inch, or are they doing it by print location? Because it seems like it's all over the place.
I know of a certain free tool everyone could check out. I think it's called the InkTavo DTF pricing calculator.
Just got to work that in, but yeah, thanks for getting it over that.
There's an easy option for you. But yeah, everything you just said, you need to calculate your material costs, your labor costs, your overhead costs, figure out your desired profit margin. And with that initial setup cost for DTF printing, if you're going to bring it in-house, that includes, purchasing the equipment. So look at that as like a DTF printer, the powder shaker dryer, a nice heat press, consumables, ink powder transfers, that environment that we talked about. So the proper ventilation. And I mean, this all can range, from $10,000 to $50,000, depending on the size of your shop. And you also have to consider staffing, training, equipment upgrades. So, I mean, I know you're talking about finished products there, but all of that kind of is involved. Sure. But yeah, I don't know. When I talk to people, it really does run the gamut as to how they're pricing things differently. But overall, I think they're pricing DTF higher than screen printing.
How do you price direct film? And there's a lot of different ways of doing it. So the only way we could figure out how to do it is interview the experts, people that were in the trenches that were selling. We co-sponsored that pricing calculator with Supercolor, and I thought it was just going to be a breeze to put together. But our team, there was a lot of back and forth. We all kind of came together, and I think we put together something pretty good. And we've had over 2,000 people download that. So I think it's been a good starting point for a lot of folks. But that being said, it's a premium decoration process. And I'm a big believer, don't price it like screen printing, because the screen printer isn't going to be able to compete with you on those little production runs anyways. They're not going to do a 8-color simulated process job at 24 pieces or 12 or even 36 or 48. So you can price it as a premium. And you also wash durability. I think you can, from a wash durability point of view, I think you can also, position it as premium decoration. Tips and resources that you recommend for training yourself and your employees on DTF printing. And I think probably the biggest tip, we talked about that already, is DTFprinting.com and your media organization, all the great content. What's available to them through your resources? And are there any other resources that you'd recommend?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the plug. Head to DTFprinting.com. We have DTF basics, videos walking you through the entire DTF printing process. We have education, shop profiles. There's constant articles, videos, content, coming out every single week. I would subscribe to our newsletter. We also just launched a web series where we're going in and talking to print shops who have brought DTF in-house. You can hear directly from people who have adopted the technology and seen, what works for them. So yeah, definitely check out DTFprinting.com and subscribe to our newsletter and check out the podcast and all that. But other than that, for training and tips, work with your vendor because you've already gone through that list and found the right one. Attend trade shows like DTF Expo, but seriously, attending trade shows are huge, especially if you go to workshop and education sessions. You can complete virtual or in-person training courses. Those are happening, across the country. Visit other print shops. I think that's so key. Everyone is so willing to open their doors. Like, go see how it's working for someone. And, there's enough, work for everyone here. So just check out another print shop, see their setup, talk to them, ask questions, really grow your network because the technology is going to keep changing. You're going to have to keep up. I guess if you decide to not bring a printer in-house, then you're just heat pressing, which is very easy to train someone to do. I can do it. So that says a lot. So yeah, just stay kind of just in the know, talk to people, and don't just go head down, really work on growing that network and constantly consuming information and content from reliable sources.
There's tons of great educational information on our Graphics Flow YouTube channel. You can get there just by going to graphicsflow.com and scan into the bottom. And I did a whole series of videos in conjunction with Supercolor on art preparation and very detailed, nuanced videos, and including videos on Illustrator. Corel even did an Inkscape one. There's also a really good archive of webinars that we've done. And then also the InkSoft YouTube channel, we've got great information there. That's where this particular webcast will be stored and archived. And also our big channel, which is Printavo, which has the biggest number of followers. So make sure to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channels. Great educational content. You are the cutting edge of trade shows for this industry. You guys were the first to market with a DTF-centered trade show. We attended the event last year. We were super impressed. I especially liked it because I got to sleep in my own bed because it was in Phoenix. But it was a great event. The vibe was great, met some great people. The education was great. We did some good commerce, made some new friends, got kind of learned so much about the industry and what's going on. It really felt like part of a community. So it went so well that we're doing it again. And tell us a little bit about DTF Expo and what your plans are. And
yes, thank you, Craig and Inktavo, for being exhibitors of our first ever DTF Expo, and again, our second one next year. So DTF Printing is the exclusive media sponsor of DTF Expo, which is taking place in Mesa, Arizona, just about 15 minutes away from Phoenix, April 1st through 2nd of next year. And as Craig said, our first expo was a huge success, so much that we are doubling in size for exhibitors and attendees in 2025 at the Mesa Convention Center. So yeah, the event really is for anyone in the decorated apparel space who are interested in learning more about direct-to-film printing. So, whether you're just starting out or you're already running machines in-house, you run a screen printing shop, you're interested in finding the best transfer provider, this is an opportunity for education, networking, and hopefully purchasing. So we have 14 speakers and multiple pre-expo workshops. Like I said, those are so important to attend. Exhibitor registration is available now. Obviously, Inktavo is on our list of current exhibitors. We also have M&R, Roland, Sanmar, DuPont, Sales Inc., Lawson, Lane 7, DGI Apparel. Attendee registration will open October 8th, and that's when we'll announce our speaker lineup. Sponsorship opportunities are available, as well as exhibitor spots. So yeah, if anyone's interested, you can head to dtfexpo.com, which Craig is showing off now. You can follow our social media accounts, or you can even just email me at adrienne@dtfprinting.com for more information. But I'm super excited. I think this is going to be such an awesome show. And thanks to everyone who was involved in the inaugural event. We'll have our DTF Printing t-shirt contest again, which we're having our semi-annual one here in a few weeks at Printing United Expo. So we'll have a happy hour again. Just a lot of opportunity to learn and grow in this really cool new market.
Yeah, you'll see us there. We are really excited to be a participant again. So I always ask the same question at the end of every one of our Decorator Academies. What is that single piece of advice that you would give someone that's considering getting into the world of direct-to-film printing and products?
Just go for it. Like whatever that looks like, just do it. Because if you're not adapting, if you're not offering this in some way, like you're not going to grow with the industry. That the saying, adopt or die, like that most likely will happen in some way if you aren't just kind of going for it. And don't just willy-nilly go for it, but really just dive in and figure out what works best for your shop, whether that's bringing it in-house, outsourcing transfers, or outsourcing the whole thing. It's here to stay. And so just do it in the way that works for your business. Jump in, have fun with it, like be part of this really cool new niche of the industry. And yeah, good luck.
All right. Excellent. Again, thank you, Adrienne, for joining me on Decorator Academy. We'll have to do this again sometime, and we'll be hanging out at the expo for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And just one of the other things when working with a vendor, Inktavo is a really good example of this. They're pushing out content and education to help your business grow. And that's something that you should be looking for, is someone that's not gatekeeping information and they're really focused on education and content, because that's how we all grow and succeed in the industry. So thank you for all you're doing.
That's my job. That's what I get to do. I've got the coolest job in the world, this director of education, and I'm on the team that helps pump out that great content. So I appreciate the positive feedback and encouragement, and we'll keep it up. All right. Well, take care of yourself, Adrienne.
Thanks, Craig. You too.